Muted.
Help us as we get started, and if you want, on the right-hand side, you can type what the location of your town or community is. We'd love to be able to see where in Texas we have folks listening. I am the Executive Director of the PNM Resources Foundation. The PNM Resources Foundation includes the TNMP Fund. We love the work that happens in Texas through our great employees, and the opportunity community matters deeply to us. Today, we'll be going through the requirements and an overview of the TNMP Power Grants. We have $50,000 that we're going to distribute to communities throughout Texas. I'll also then provide an opportunity for you to ask questions. You can type those questions over in the right column, and then we will go on to a little workshop on fundraising. How do you think about developing resources for your organization? That may or may not be interest to some of you who have done this work for a long time, but we offer it just in case anybody wants to stay on the phone. You should also know that the recorded version of the first half of this presentation will be available on the TNMP website beginning in the next day or two. So thank you so much. It's great to have 29 of you on the phone. I'm especially excited because there are 3 people in particular that do extraordinary work in Texas for TNMP, and those are our community managers. We have Renee Kettler, Diana Vasquez, and Barry Bonds. These folks know most of you so well. They know our communities, and they're the ones who are really on the ground doing the great work. Their contact information is at the end of this presentation. I suspect you all know how to get a hold of them already, but if not, that information will be available. Also, if any of you are having technical issues of any kind, please type that in the chat function that you see, and we'll do our best to either refer you to the headquarters of the meeting company that can, the GoToMeeting company that can help you or answer it. You also might see that everyone has been muted on this call. That's just so that there aren't any distracting background noises for folks. So with that, let's begin. TNMP has a rich history of supporting the communities that we care about. So, you know, there are so many different ways that our employees are engaged in the community, and we think about how can we use the different assets that we have to make communities in Texas that we serve better. So we have corporate resources that we invest. Those are contributions that TNMP makes in communities throughout Texas. We have our employees who are doing incredible things. You can see a picture there of our TNMP employees adopting a highway and doing cleanup work. And then we work with our community partners. This combined approach is how we try to support the communities that we serve. Specifically, community engagement includes 3 very different kinds of resources. Corporate giving and the community managers I mentioned earlier are the ones that handle that corporate giving. Employee engagement. You know, through our foundation, we put up to $2,000 on the table to support every single TNMP employee and every single TNMP retiree. These folks make magic happen in your communities, and we put money behind them to help support that. And finally, we have a charitable foundation. These dollars inside our charitable foundation are part of an endowment that each year generates money to be invested back into the communities that we care about. The grants that we're going to talk about today, the TNMP Power Grants, are from our foundation giving. So for the TNMP Power Grants and our TNMP giving in general, there are 5 different ways that we invest in the community. We invest around community safety. We invest to help educate the people of Texas. We invest around preserving and enhancing the environment, about promoting the economic vitality of our communities, and in helping our customers. These are essential ways that we work together to be an important corporate citizen in the communities that we serve. So I also, though, do want to focus a moment on our employees, because we have great ways to support the things our employees care about. Our community volunteer team is called the Community Crew. Hopefully some of you have seen TNMP employees out, whether it's helping at a food pantry or cleaning up in the environment or doing countless other things. Our Community Crew is our way we as a company come together to support. We have a day of service where everybody throughout Texas and New Mexico participates in that. We also provide something called an Employee Power Grant, which is an opportunity to support employees in groups of 5 or more who want to do something. Perhaps they want to get together and do a food drive and help engage people. Perhaps they want to do a run to help raise funds to cure cancer. Perhaps they want to do some kind of a rehab of a facilities project for their favorite nonprofit. We put dollars behind those employees to do just that. As a corporation, we know volunteerism in the community matters, so we provide 8 hours of paid volunteer time off for every single one of our employees every single year. And then, as I mentioned, we have a matching and volunteer grants program that provides up to $2,000 each calendar year for every single TNMP employee and every single TNMP retiree. That will match dollar for dollar a charitable contribution that an employee makes to a Texas nonprofit or an educational institution nationally, up to $1,000 in any calendar year. And it will also provide a grant up to $500 for each of 2 nonprofits with whom our employees and retirees volunteer. These are great ways to get additional resources into the programs that you care about. But we're really here today to talk about the TNMP Power Grants. I'm excited to say that this is the 3rd year that we've done this. Last year we distributed $30,000 to nonprofits throughout Texas and some municipalities as well. This year there's $50,000 that we can invest. And there are 4 key areas that we're going to request proposals from. And I'm excited to say, just since the time when we first put this online, we've already gotten a handful of applicants for these grants, and that's exciting to see come through. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking specifically about what we're seeking to do with the funds that we are trying to invest in the good work that you all are doing in Texas. The first is we want proposals around community safety. How can we improve community safety, either directly for the residents in public areas or indirectly through public safety services? In the past, we've had some great proposals from fire departments or folks who want to think differently about increasing some lighting and safety access in places where people gather. There are all sorts of different ways to think about community safety, but it's really important for us at TNMP to be able to invest in that. The second key area is economic vitality. We all know that economic development opportunities make a huge difference for the communities that we care about. So the extent that we can help with job training, job creation programs, we want to support those, and those are perfect ways to think about how to apply for power grants. At the core of everything we do, however, is education. So TNMP supports educational initiatives, especially those that target literacy and high school graduation rates, youth leadership, workforce development skills. You know, I've been doing this kind of work for 16 years, and one of the things I've learned is that just about anybody can make an argument that what they're doing is about education. And while I totally get that that's true, please keep in mind that for TNMP and the TNMP Power Grant opportunity, we're really looking at these things that I'm talking about, targeting literacy, improving high school graduation rates, youth leadership, and workforce development skills. And then finally, the environment. We know because of the industry that we are in that we have an impact on the environment. So we seek proposals that provide a measurable and visible environmental impact. You could think of things like preservation, restoration, beautification, or environmental education. There have been some fantastic proposals over the years where people have really turned lots, spaces of land into really beautiful gathering places. One of my favorites, I think, from a few years back was a butterfly garden that somebody wanted to put in. But there are all sorts of ways that we can think about environment. So those are the 4 areas. Let me talk now a little bit about the grant proposal overview. So these are the things that you are going to be asked to talk to us about. The first, we want you just to quite simply describe the project and the community need. You all are experts at your communities, but the grant reviewers will be from all over Texas. The folks that will review your application are TNMP employees. Many of them know your communities, but many of them live in very different parts of Texas. So we really need you to talk and tell us about the community need that your project is trying to address. We also like to see demonstrations of any kinds of collaborations or the engagement of the community in the project you're doing. In this day and age, it's more important than ever that we all work together. So to the extent that you can show that, it's important to include if that is something that your proposal includes. You absolutely have to have measurable goals. What is it you are trying to do? And I understand sometimes it's super hard to measure certain kinds of goals, but we really need to be able to get our heads around and our arms around what is it that this particular project is trying to accomplish. A budget and a timeline are an absolute must. The detailed plans for maintenance and sustainability. If, for example, you were to create a pocket park, that's a terrific idea, but we would need to understand how are you going to maintain it, who is going to maintain it, where are the funds for maintaining it going to come from, and how likely is it to be sustained throughout time. It's important to us that you tell us how you're going to recognize the TNMP Fund and what your plans are to be able to do that. And then to the extent that it's possible, if you have an opportunity to engage our volunteers, we'd like to know about it. We absolutely understand that many projects don't lend themselves to that, but if it is, we really want to know about that. So I'd like to go in depth into each of those categories and be able to tell you a little bit more about this information and exactly what we're looking at. You will see in a subsequent slide the actual chart that describes how your application is going to be reviewed. I think it's really important for us to be transparent about this. We want to tell you exactly what we're looking for so that you have the best opportunity to be successful as you go forward on your grant application. So this first section, as you log in and complete your grant proposal, is the grant summary. It is worth 30% of the overall score that the reviewers accord to your proposal. So it includes a brief overview of the proposed project, the specific and measurable goals and objectives, and if there are any partnerships that you should that you are undertaking for the purposes of this grant. So I would just encourage you as you go along to say, is this incredibly crisp? Is this very clear? You know, ask someone who is not inside your office or who doesn't live in your house to take a look and read and say, from this, can you understand what we are proposing to do? Sometimes I find when I've been doing grant proposals and when I've been asking people to support things that I'm deeply passionate about, I'm so immersed in it that it's hard for me to not assume that the rest of the world knows about this project in the same way that I do. And sometimes I leave out important components to that. So this overview is really important to be able to introduce the reviewer to the project that you're wanting to do. The second section is incredibly useful and important for us. As I mentioned, you all are the experts in your communities. We are not. You'll see this is a hugely important section because it has 40% of your overall score. What is the community need that you are trying to address? What are the outcomes and how will you measure this? And then what is your plans for long-term maintenance and sustainability? Now, there will definitely be times when your project will not be a long-term project. I understand that, and the grant certainly understands that. But if you are proposing something that will exist 12 months from now, you absolutely need to be able to address and help us understand how it is that you intend to sustain that project. The next section, 15% of your overall score, is recognition. We want to know what your plans are to either engage TNM employees, if that's possible, but really, how would you utilize existing media for this? Many of you have done a brilliant job in the past at utilizing social media. For others of you, that's not necessarily the best way to get the word out. We have a great communications person in Eric Paul who will work with our grant recipients to do a variety of traditional press release kinds of things. And then one of the great things about our community managers is they are actually on the ground and can help be at a ribbon cutting or be in places where we can celebrate the great work that you all are doing through these grants. So the recognition piece is another important piece that you'll want to address. And finally, the last but absolutely not the least important criteria is the timeline and budget. And actually, as I kind of think back, many times this is where nonprofits fall short, and this is where people sometimes fail in providing the kinds of information that a reviewer really needs to be successfully reviewing what it is you're trying to do. There's a timeline, and you'll see on a subsequent page that you can see what that timeline really should look like, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But we ought to be able, in the timeline, to see the story of what you're trying to do from implementation to completion. It's important for us to understand how it is you're going to go about carrying out and actually implementing the grant that you've already told us about in the prior sections. Perhaps the most important single section of all is the budget. You know, the budget should tell a story. We should be able to, on that budget, understand exactly what you're trying to do. We need you to clearly detail the materials, the supplies, the kinds of costs that you're seeking funding for. And if, for example, you're trying to beautify a park, and I'm not encouraging you to do this, I'm just trying to make a simple example, and you're putting in 6 benches and 12 trees and a shade canopy, you should be able to show the cost per bench and then the total cost of what it is you're proposing, both in the number of benches and then the total project cost. What we're not interested in is what the budget is for your nonprofit. If you have a $50,000 or a $500,000 or a $5 million operating budget is not something that we're going to be reviewing. What we care about is whether or not you have helped us understand how you are going to use the $5,000 or whatever amount you request. You don't have to request the full amount, but how you are going to use the $5,000 from the TNMP Fund. You also have the opportunity to provide 2 letters of support if you want to that would detail your partnership. This is not required. This is just something additional you can do. So you will not lose points if you do not put in letters, but you have the opportunity, if you so choose, to add letters. On the next screen, you can see this is what I mean by a timeline. You should be able to help us see from, whatever the months are that your particular project will take, and you usually have a little more than a year to complete it from the time you sign your grant agreement. You have the opportunity to show us what are the stages and when is this going to be done. So the timeline can be as simple as what you see before you, but it's really important to get it done. The other thing that I mentioned is the budget. Very, very important. We ought to be able to see from the budget just exactly what it is you're doing and how you want to get it done. I mentioned earlier the scoring rubric, and I've included it here for your information. It's important that you know what we're looking at as we review grants. And again, as I mentioned, the reviewers in this case are employees from Texas, from the communities that we serve in Texas and where our employees live. So this is a wonderful group of your community folks who will be looking at this. But this is the guidance that we're giving them for each of the different categories to let them know what it is that we want to do. So what is the process? Like, what do we do? How do we go about all of this? Well, first we screen each proposal to ensure that they comply with the criteria. And I will tell you 98% of them succeed on that first screen. Each proposal then is read and evaluated by a cross-sector team of TNMP employees. Each community manager will be reading all of the proposals for his or her various areas, but then we'll have other TNMP employees reading those grants as well. You'll be notified no later than November of the success, and actually I think it will be sooner than that, but that's the end date by which you will be notified. And then you have until December 1st of 2017 to complete the project that you're working on. So that's kind of the timeline. There are, as I mentioned, 3 really important people that can help answer just about any question that you might have. Barry Bonds represents North Texas communities, Central and West Texas, Renee Kettler, and the Gulf Coast is Diana Vasquez. You can also email me at community@tnmp.com, or you're welcome to give me a call as well. But really, these folks in your local communities are some of the best resources that you have for getting questions answered. So with that, I'll take a breath and allow you to type any kinds of questions that you might have over in the right. This is the end of the first portion of the presentation that is all about, just about the TNMP grant. I do want to talk and provide an opportunity to go over information about grant writing in general, how to go about doing fundraising, but I recognize that some of you may not be interested in that. So we'll answer questions here.